Welcome to Let's Talk Antigonish, the podcast where we sit down with neighbors, experts, and friends to explore the stories, the questions, and the big little issues that shape life in our town, one conversation at a time. This week, we're talking about the Sisters of St. Martha and the outsized impact they've had on this town for the past 125 years. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Antigonish. I am one half of the host, Justin.
And I'm the other half, Anuj.
Together, we make one whole host. So that's a weird way to introduce ourselves.
I know.
It's too late. It's already happened. So today, we are here we're here to talk about St. Martha's. It's an institution in this town probably a lot of people have heard of. 125 years.
Wow.
That's right. So we have in the studio Sister Joanne O'Regan. Hello.
Hello.
And what is your full sort of title and association?
I am a Sister of St. Martha, and I'm on the leadership team for the congregation. And I currently hold the position of General Secretary.
General Secretary?
Yeah. So I've been on the leadership team for 12 years. I should be finished this year.
Okay.
So
you've got a lot of knowledge.
What does that mean, though? For somebody who's listening to that.
What to be on the leadership team?
And
General Secretary?
Yeah.
Well, as part of our governance, we are an institution as well, so we do have structure around us. So every 5 years, and the length of time of this has changed over years, but currently it's every 5 years. We have what we call a chapter, and that's where we set the course for the next 5 years, and we elect a leadership team. So we're democratically elected.
Oh, wow.
And a couple of positions are appointed. The General Secretary is actually an appointed position. So I held both an elected position and an appointed position for about 10 years. And now I am appointed as General Secretary.
Great.
Right now. And so I'm responsible, just in a nutshell, for all of the documentation of the congregation and communications, IT, things like that.
So you're the perfect person for this interview.
One would think.
But you are not alone, because we also have Marielle Assad. You have a lot of titles, so please give them all.
I'm coordinator for the Charism Ministry, hermitage host for the Sisters Hermitages up at Bethany. I'm also a Martha associate and a longtime friend of the Marthas.
Okay, there's lots of words in there not everyone's going to be familiar with. So let's go with charism. What does that mean?
Charism, it's a religious term, but essentially it's a spark you have within you that you're born with, that you have to make the world a better place. It's a spiritual gift or a supernatural grace.
Okay.
That shapes the way you see the world and how you respond to it.
So how does that, because you're in charge of that, how does that manifest in everyday life for you?
That's a harder question. Maybe I should define what gospel hospitality is.
I was going to say, that was my next question.
Yeah,
What is hospitality? Because that's like the main deal for the Marthas.
So let's go back to charism first too.
Okay.
So it's this gift that you have that transforms the world with purpose. So it's your purpose, your raison d'être, or the reason that you're on this planet to make it better. And once you discover what it is and tap into it, you can set the world on fire with this spark. So the different religious communities have their own charism, and these charisms can be healing, education, understanding, communication, creativity. Like I'd say your charism is creativity and communication.
It might be. Could be video game playing.
He's not that caring otherwise, you know that.
Not about you specifically.
Yeah, I know.
But hospitality is then the charism for the Marthas.
And
okay.
It's a gospel hospitality, which is a radical hospitality inspired by St. Martha, who was a great hostess and had Jesus into her home often and was a great friend of him. But it's also rooted in the gospel message of the way that this man in first century Palestine treated the people around him. So he ate with criminals and he taught women and he healed the untouchables. So he really went out to the margins and loved and accepted these people.
So that has become the core of what the Marthas have been doing for 125 years. That was there at the beginning.
Yeah,
pretty much.
But they didn't name it as a charism.
Okay.
In the beginning, I think it was only after Vatican II that they started naming it. But I mean, everything they've done, from their homemaking, starting at St. Avex, to the hospital work and the social justice, to today with their work with integral ecology and all that, it's all, they see the world through the lens of gospel hospitality.
And I can easily relate to that. You mentioned, others have it, other religions have it, and it's such a core value that many other religions have it. Like, I can relate it with Jainism very easily.
A core purpose that drives you as a person, or
as a society, as a community. The charism is such a critical part of that.
Yeah.
So the hospitality aspect then, because that has formed the basis of the Marthas, and you just listed a large number of things that have happened. So can you tell us what has happened because of the hospitality issue for the past 125 years? What sort of things have you been involved with?
Sure. Well, our beginnings really, as Marielle said, it's been an evolution in understanding, but we can look back at our roots, where we were founded for the campus of St. Francis Xavier to do the homemaking. And we name it now as homemaking. It was probably considered housekeeping then. Right. But we looked after the domestic needs of this really struggling university, as well as looking after the students in the infirmary, so they were sick, and feeding them as well. So in that is that essence of hospitality. And St. Martha had taken as the patroness of that, because she was always the patroness of homemakers and that. So when we were called into being by the Bishop of Antigonish in 1900, there's a bit of history before that, because we came out of the Sisters of Charity of Halifax. There was an arrangement that they would send young sisters here, but that arrangement fell apart, and the bishop called for a new congregation to be started that would be just for the Diocese of Antigonish, or really just for the university. And so in our origin story, there are a couple of really important things that are pretty key. One is that he entered a retreat and asked for volunteers. And I keep in mind the old-fashioned picture, they've got these habits on where they have no peripheral vision. Mm-hmm. Imagine women not having peripheral vision in those days. So they didn't know who was standing. They didn't know. They weren't allowed to talk to each other prior to this retreat. So they stood and volunteered, not knowing who else was going to go. So in the end, 13 stood at this retreat and 2 joined later. And so for us, standing at a key moment of decision-making is a real visual for us.
Okay.
So when we've made important decisions in the last number of years, we'll symbolically stand to say, yes, we agree. So like moving out of the mother house, that was a moment where we all stood so that we could see ourselves.
There's a reclaiming of agency inside.
Absolutely, yeah. So this group of 13 originally arrived in Antigonish, and then 2 joined later. And the thing that's important for us, in understanding who we are, is that group founding, this communal founding. A lot of congregations were founded by a single person or 2 with a vision. And they're considered their founders, like Marguerite Bourgeois, St. Marguerite Bourgeois founded the Congregation de Notre Dame, the C&Ds as we know them. We were founded by this group of women. So we consider the bishop to be as a co-founder, but this group of 15 women to be our founders. So that's an important thing for us as we go forward in our story, because we're around Antigonish at the turn of the century. Priests are coming back from Rome that had studied in Rome and were around at the time of Rerum Novarum, the first encyclical of Catholic social teaching, which talked about the dignity of work. And it started to codify social teaching, which, the 3 prime principles are the dignity of the person, the right to be in community, and to have agency, right? So subsidiarity and... So those are important things happening all around at the same time. So this group of women, appear as together and take this university on and really save it from financial ruin. They made $2 a month. They were provided with housing, pretty rudimentary.
Were they living up at the university?
At the university. So what now is the Cody administrative building was our original mother house.
Okay.
So that was built for the sisters to live. And then, Xavier Hall and all that, that was all infirmary and things, classes all together. So the sisters took care of all of that. So that group founding is a really important thing. So as we go along, we immediately get called out to do other things. And the first mission that we were asked to do was in healthcare. So it was in St. Joseph's Hospital in Glace Bay to do the homemaking. But the town of Antigonish didn't have a hospital. So the sisters literally went door to door begging money to raise money to
What
open.
year would that be?
1901 to, I think, St. Martha's Hospital, with the name St. Martha's Hospital, opened in 06, I think.
Okay.
So prior to that, they didn't own anything. So they had to beg to get a building to put a hospital in, and then they had to get money to run it. And there's a story of they had to buy they could only afford one good pair of shoes, so they had to share the shoes, to go out. One would wear it in the morning.
Cannot imagine trying to fit in Anuj's shoes.
I know.
Well, they're too small for you.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be sharing some people's shoes.
True.
Seriously. Anyway, so it started that way, and then the requests kept coming to do other things. So eventually, fast forward a little bit, the sisters are like, the university controlled everything that the sisters did. We were considered a diocesan community, which means that we were under the authority completely of the local bishop. But as we grew in confidence and maturity, both in community life and in skill and ministry, the sisters were wanting to be more independent and have more say in who they were and what they were about. So eventually, with the help of Dr. Cody and others, Jimmy Tompkins as well, we gained independence from the university. And in 1921, we moved into what was Bethany, the Mother House, which for newcomers, sadly, it's not there now. Some have a memory of it. It was deconstructed in 2019, and we moved out in 2018. It was deconstructed in 2019, but it was up behind the hospital. So, and it was built in 3 phases. So that's a whole. We could do a whole thing on that.
And how did the size grew over time?
Well, what they called recruits then, but women wanting to live this way of life. So there's a few things. It's like, sociologically, there's a few things going on, like options for women in those days were pretty limited. Being a religious, of course, faith component is a big part of it, probably the primary part. But the other parts of it are opportunities to do things that you might not have had opportunity to do. Service is a huge, huge factor in what would draw a person to live that way of life, this way of life, which has changed radically now since the 1960s than it would have been in those early days. The church, we're considered apostolic, which means we're active, we're out in the world. We're not cloistered. We weren't cloistered. But the church imposed a model of life on these women that mirrored a monastic, cloistered life, but expected them to be out. So you're living in this really weird organization, of grand silence at night and, working your fingers to the bone in the day. And it's just a funny thing. Anyway, so women would be coming in droves. Now, religious life, when it started 2,000 however odd years ago, in the Desert Mothers and Fathers, they were small numbers. And the founders, there's different eras of religious life as it evolved. And a lot of them came because of a charism spoke to them. Like for Marguerite Bourgeois, who came to what is now Montreal, it was liberating education. It was about educating young women, really connected to the Filles du Roi that came to Montreal, to the New World, looking after them and educating. So women would have been attracted to that. For us, they would have been attracted to that service, that homegrownness that the Marthas have. They were often described as earthy women. And the local clergy would have known the Marthas from their time studying at St. FX. And they would have approached young women in their parishes and said, I think you could make a good Martha. And a lot of it was that. That's how a lot of women came in those days. So there's like this anomaly of numbers over the last 200 years up until maybe the early 60s that we've normalized as what it should be. But that's really a blip. In a 2,000-year history, that's really a blip of time. So having smaller numbers is probably
Is the
more.
norm.
This is
Is probably
fascinating.
more norm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in 1921, you sort of broke away from the university, and that I assume that allowed you some freedom that you didn't have previously.
Yeah.
And so what happened? What changed then? What did you end up accomplishing?
Well, what it did was it led to being able to say yes to requests that we may not have said yes to, because the university wanted us for themselves and the local area. So our first mission outside of Nova Scotia was actually St. Augustine Seminary in Toronto in 1913. But we also helped found the Sisters of St. Martha of Prince Edward Island, who we consider cousins, but they're a separate congregation. And they were founded in similar ways, like for the domestic service of what was St. Dunstan's College. But we also then, we could move into healthcare more fully here in Antigonish with the opening of the hospital and all that that meant. Eventually into care for elderly. So we built and ran the R.K. MacDonald nursing home for a number of years. Then Moses Cody called us to Marguerite to teach. And that led to, we went to places where education wasn't necessarily an option at the time. So we went to a lot of rural communities and taught there. But the bigger part of it was that so that way we were still considered a diocesan institute. In the late 1920s, we petitioned Rome to become what we call pontifical, which removed us from the direct authority of the local bishop to the authority of the Vatican.
Oh, so you report directly to the Vatican.
We vote directly to the Vatican.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that gives you even more freedom. That means that we could say yes to going to Lethbridge in 1929 and not have to check it out with the guy here.
Yeah.
So that gave us the most freedom.
This is fascinating. The words you are using, like liberating, and how being part of an establishment and yet being independent. This is a very special space that you are explaining to us.
It is. It's a complicated space that we hold as women in the Roman Catholic Church. And an evolving space, I want to say.
I feel like a lot of people associate the Marthas with social justice work, things not traditionally associated with these sorts of organizations.
Right.
Can you talk how, because you started off doing some education, the RK. So how did you get to the point where now in 2026, you're quite associated with like the environmental movement and things like that? That's quite a departure, I'd say, from traditional areas. It is and it isn't.
It's an evolution. Like that's going to be a key word for us. Everything's going to be the evolution of. So a really important factor that goes along with that being founded as a group is our relationship with Dr. Cody and Dr. Tompkins.
Okay.
And their work in the beginnings of the Antigonish movement. So we're considered to be part of the founding of the Antigonish movement. Now, a sociologist from Australia came and gave a talk here once, and he said, from his research, it's hard to tell who influenced who more, the Marthas or Cody.
Interesting.
It is interesting, and for me that was a real eye opener, and I loved it because what it did for me was it gave us some cred, that we knew what we were doing, and that being a group mattered, and we learned early on how to make decisions collaboratively with one another and as a group. So consensus building,
And you helped establish a hospital. You helped establish RK. So you have built institutions in this town and county.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
We definitely have. And also helped with other institutions get their feet off the ground, or supported them once they did. So that piece of justice work, a lot of our sisters grew up with Moses Cody coming to their homes doing people schools. So it's in their bones. In fact, 3 of our sisters' fathers were pallbearers at Moses Cody's funeral. So we do have a deep connection to the movement. I get a little riled up when people talk about Antigonish movement as a historical movement, because we still live it.
This is fascinating.
We
Joanne.
still live it.
Wow.
Like I believe it. We may not use the language, and maybe we need to start saying it more. It's not just in the spirit of the Antigonish movement. It's because of it that we make some decisions that we make.
This, from a person who works in the nonprofit charitable world, which I do a lot, like my main concern is at the very start, how did you raise funds to build a hospital and an RK? Going door to door, is that sort of how the tradition is built? Like local people giving? Is that where
it did start that way? And also the way we're structured. So every dime we make as individuals goes into a common pot.
Okay.
So I have no personal wealth at all. The vow that we take of poverty, which is a really difficult one because outwardly you wouldn't see it, but it really is about our relationship with money as individuals. So not having personal wealth, personal possessions, everything's held in common.
Okay.
I remember at one of the classes that I worked at the Cody Institute in peace building, and I remember talking about that as how we structure our lives. And it resonated so strongly with these community development workers. It was wonderful. But they didn't realize that. It's like it was something they didn't understand, that's how we structure our lives.
So does that mean, this is fascinating, I don't know anything about this. Does that mean sisters are headed out in the world and like have a random job, earn money, and then dump it into the pot?
Well, not a random job. It's usually related to the mission.
Presumably, yeah, they're not just working at Tim Hortons.
But that's a recent thing, that justice piece, even for ourselves, was we weren't paid for a lot of the work we did. All of the work that went into the hospital, like the billions of dollars of unpaid labor, but that's not why we did it. So it's hard for me to say that, but it's contributed service, right? So that's one reason why it could grow and be successful. Sound management and not a lot of overhead because the sisters' work was...
in-kind donations, essentially, your whole lives. Yeah. Anuj, you got a question?
Yeah, so how does that show up today in Antigonish, if we were to leap back for now? And how does that show up? And I know I am personally aware of number of causes you support very actively, not just with money, but with you showing up in some ways. Like you have been a constant contributor to safe work. So tell us a little bit. Tell the listeners, how do you show up in the community today?
Today, I think it's more subtle. It's not as overt. We're not as visible for 2 reasons. We're not in habits, and there aren't as many of us.
When did the habit thing stop, by the way?
In 67-ish, after the Second Vatican Council, which really opened the doors to a lot of changes.
Oh, so lots of people dropped the habits then? Or were you like ahead of the curve? I feel like...
No, it was pretty much the norm.
Oh, okay.
It was pretty much the norm across the board.
For the uninitiated, what does habits mean?
Oh.
That was that traditional black dress with the veil.
The Hollywood nun.
The Hollywood nun.
The flying nun stuff.
Now that doesn't mean that it's not a valid way, because there are some communities that retain or have kept the habit, and that's fine. That's their choice. For us as Marthas, it was harder we just felt like being like everyone else and being able to move in the community without that visible barrier was a better way for us.
Okay.
Better? I don't know. Language always fails, right?
Yeah.
It was just different. It was it made it easier. So social work was a real pioneering field for us as well. We did a lot of social work and that doesn't mean that our nurses and all our healthcare workers and our teachers and our homemakers because the homemakers reached out to the larger community and did things we'll never know what homemakers did for communities, for families that couldn't feed their children. We'll never know the impact really that they had on families around. The homemakers that were at St. FX, so we lived on campus until 1994. So there are people that were young working in maintenance or housekeeping that the sisters would, give them a meal out the back door. So we'll never understand fully the impact of all of that, but we know it exists. So for us, the social justice stance is just there. It's part of, remember when I said at the very beginning, around the time that Rerum Novarum was coming out and Catholic social teaching was being codified and the canon was being developed, all these encyclicals would come out. The sisters stayed in touch with all of that with the help of the clergy around that brought them along and the work that they were doing. Sister Marie Michael running the library that bears her name at the Cody, learning about the world through the eyes of these people that would come to learn about the Antigonish movement.
So this is very, very Paulo Freirean in some ways, where you are engaging a lot, every day.
What was the word you just used?
Paulo Freirean, which is
Paulo Ferreira.
Oh, okay. That's a highly technical term. I
No,
didn't
it
know
is. It truly is.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
And that approach to adult education is in a lot of, like I say, it's in our bones. I think we can't help it.
Right.
And a lot of our sisters wouldn't even say, "You mean I did that?" Absolutely, you did that. Because it was part of our formation. It was part of the conversation. So the impact today, so all of that evolution of justice work, it just makes sense that it's evolved into collaboration has always been a key value for us. So it's not just a word, like it is a way of being with us. So when I was chair of our social justice committee in the early 2000s, two members of the committee, Sister Marion Sheridan and Colleen Cameron, who was the first layperson, meaning non-sister, on this committee with us.
Colleen Cameron is in the Colleen Cameron we know?
As in the Colleen
Oh,
Cameron,
okay.
you know.
We all know.
Yeah.
Yes, we all know, yeah.
There's only one Colleen Cameron.
I agree.
She's a
And
force.
she would agree too.
Yeah.
They went and met with Lucille Harper, and they talked about, what are we going to do about the poverty here? How are we going to do this? And out of that initial conversation was born what then was called the Antigonish Poverty Reduction Coalition.
Oh.
Which is now,
Anti-poverty coalition.
To end, yeah. We just had a meeting with them the other day.
Yeah.
And out of that came the community transit. And out of that came also the Affordable Housing Society. And a number of other initiatives. In around the time of the Women's March, I think it was in 2000. That was just before I came. We were invited as a congregation to stand with the Women's Resource Center over a period of weeks, weekly. And we said yes. And it was transformative for us. People say it was transformative for the town. It was transformative for us to stand up publicly for women around the world.
So there's a general tendency for people who do good, to also be acknowledged and recognized, and that's how they get their oxygen. But you seem to be very behind the scene. You don't really go out of the town and say, "This is what we did." So is that deliberate? Is that something that?
Is it deliberate? Well, I think that's the question of but why do you do what you do? I mean, we've all said yes to this life of service, committed to gospel hospitality. Our mission statement is, we Sisters of St. Martha, inspired by God's graciousness, hear, embrace, and respond to the cry for gospel hospitality. So in a sense, it's not about us, right? It's about making a better world. Our Constitution, so we have a Constitution that we live by, or try to, I should say. But in it, from our early days, is that understanding of that we're about the development of people. So that's in us as well. So yeah, it's not for us that we do it. It really is about building a community. So celebrating a year like this of 125 years and having to do this, like to talk about us,
Is weird.
It's itchy.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just like,
No, but
it's hard.
I think we need to learn this.
I
want to go back to the question that you asked.
Okay.
So this is in some ways, in theory, this is all public good, in larger scheme of things. And so you help establish hospital, you help establish arcades, you help establish many, many other institutions. So how does that then intersect with state's role? So state now, the province manages the hospital, funds or arcades, elder care. How does that relationship work out as public good? Who finances it? And how do you play that role in that space?
Well, we sold the hospital to the government in 96, I guess, because the Health Canada Act changed. Now, this was before my time, so I don't know all the detail of it. I just know that we no longer... Was it only 96 or was it 86?
But you sold it.
We did.
Yeah. Okay.
And the government took it. And this is one of the big changes, too. So the narrative out there that a lot of people buy is, including women religious, that we've done something wrong, and that's why there aren't as many women coming to religious life. When in reality... So Vatican II called us to risorgimento and aggiornamento, return to the sources and read the signs of the times. So if we continue that process, it's not a one and done. So if we're returning to our sources, we now understand the cry of earth.
Mm-hmm. This is where the environmental part comes in.
We now understand that listening to the land and listening to people are one and the same. We now understand that. So that's now a source for us. Like we return to the sources of why we are. Reading the signs of the times, the social safety net took over a lot of the places where there were gaps before we tried to fill. When the state steps in to do that, we're no longer needing to do what we do. That doesn't mean we don't care anymore. It's just not our responsibility. Someone else stepped up to do that. It's not always easy to watch, I got to say. And we hear it a lot, that the hospital's not the same since the sisters don't run it anymore, whatever. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Because we get used to things the way we're used to them. So sometimes it's not necessarily a valid thing. But I understand the sentiment and nostalgia around it. So today, it is about, so Pope Francis writes this encyclical, Laudato Si. He calls for us to... I swear he read Masters of Their Own Destiny, because he talks about listening to the cry of the poor and the cry of the earth. He talks about community development. He talks about Indigenous people's knowledge, and that we need to hear it. We need to listen. We need to step outside of our colonial brain, and we need to hear that. So he talks about building an integral ecology or an integral ecology. That takes the spiritual, social, economic, cultural, and ecological reality of life. And always pay attention to that. We've taken that as something that's going to be the lens, that is the lens that we make all our decisions. How does it affect all those aspects?
So given that lens, because that's the current lens, essentially, one of the questions we were going to ask you is about legacy planning. And we had off mic before we started, you said, I don't think legacy is the right word because we're talking about the future. So tell us then how you see the Marthas going forward with this lens and in the future. So new things that you want to be involved in, new things that you want to accomplish, and planning for your future as an organization.
So for me, the word legacy, it's tied so much to what you're leaving behind, as in historical. It's true. It is about leaving something behind. But I think we're trying to approach it as opening the door to an evolving future. How are we going to fade out with it through an open door, instead of leaving a door behind or something? And this is where Marielle's work comes in. It's part of that future, evolving future. Because collaboration is so important to us, we've recognized all along that we're surrounded by people that live out of this sense of gospel hospitality, whether they would say that or not, but they live out of that. And we're drawn to each other like a magnet, you know? So that's part of it. It's about how do we evolve into a ministry that helps people discover that in themselves. The social justice ministry, so it's really Martha Justice Ministry, social and ecological justice, care for our neighbor and our common home. So it's a lot of words. So we just say MJM, Martha Justice Ministry. But that is also about how do we create this ministry going forward that also includes the farmers that are on our property, teaching young people how to farm, how to market their farm goods, make a living out of it, teach people what to, that could have their own farm or their own garden, market garden. When we deconstructed Bethany, the mother house, which was a gut-wrenching, painful decision, but the right decision nonetheless, part of it was we can't talk about the environment and live in a place that's bleeding heat.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
I'm so excited about that part of it, because I did have years ago when I put solar panels on my house, I had a few sisters come to my house to check it out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is not what I expected to do with the people to come here. And for me, it seems so infinitely logical to just be like, why are you building a house that is bleeding heat? And I rant about this incessantly, and I feel like I'm the only one. And strangely enough, my allies happen to be the Marthas in this. So tell me how you got to that conclusion.
Well, it was about listening to Earth. It was about understanding creation in a different way. It's about understanding that we're all interconnected. The stardust in our DNA. It's about understanding that we can't make decisions that only benefit one aspect of life. It has to also care for Earth. So when we made the decision to take the mother house down, we chose a company, Dexter, actually, who were committed to deconstructing. People kept saying, demolish, and visceral reaction to it, because that's so hard. This is deconstructed because we constructed it. We're deconstructing. 96% stayed out of landfill.
What? Where did it go?
It was
my house. Everyone's
a lot
houses.
of the fixtures inside, the furnishings in that. We had a huge auction. Holy trauma-inducing. Anyway, we had this huge auction, and a lot of the stuff inside, the fixtures inside went. But so the wood went to the CACL workshop. Got a lot of the wood that was in the paneling in the chapel. The metal was recycled. Toilets, sinks, windows. A lot of it was. So we kept a lot outdoors. Doors. That was a huge thing. Everybody wanted a door. It's the funny things. You're just like, okay, really? That matters a lot to you. Okay. The terrazzo floors, though, were just like, don't ever use it. Honestly, I got to tell you.
What is a terrazzo floor?
It's like a fake marble kind of thing. And just like, it takes forever to get rid of. Anyway, and we crushed a lot of it. So a lot of the brick that was crushed down is actually the fill from the of the foundation that's now on what's now Bethany Centennial Garden.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Some of the crushed stone, which wasn't great quality, but some of it, Michael Overmars, who really is in charge of our grounds, he used some of it in some of the pathways. Oh
and
my
lovely
God.
grounds.
Oh, listen, we have the best staff on the planet. We are so blessed, every single one of them. Anyway, so I just want to say about that, about a lot of it was our understanding of that interconnectedness of everything. So what did we want to mark where the mother house stood? And what we wanted was a gift of contemplation for the community. So we've worked really hard to establish places on that property of contemplation, the contemplative trail.
Love
St.
that trail,
Teresa,
by the way. Go there all the time.
Oh, it's it's the best hidden
Yeah.
secret, and I don't know why,
Why
it's
are we
a secret.
why are we telling people? Actually,
No, I we should. No, I think
it's supposed to be
so-
secret.
We'll talk about that
Okay,
later.
As long
or
as
no,
you're-
we won't.
There's no dogs on the contemplative trail. is that
That's
right?
right. That's right.
No. And then St. Teresa's Garden, too. I mean, those were places St. Teresa's Garden and the lake or the pond or whatever it is in the back of the contemplative trail,
Yeah.
the sisters used to hike there in their habits. Can you imagine?
No.
And then the hermitages that Marielle is the host of for people to go and have time in
So
contemplation.
there are two spaces, right?
Two,
Right.
yeah.
And I think too, like it's where you can encounter their gospel hospitality, their charism too. Like they've created a space there.
And so
Of welcome
between me and Justin, can we go and spend time there? Is that allowed, or how does that work?
Well, you have to go through a rigorous application process
process.
with
Justin, I
Marielle.
don't think I am going to be.
I'll be rejected. I'm
Yeah.
afraid.
No, the thing is that they're not places for a vacation. They're not
Yeah.
places just, but yeah, you could.
I'll get back to the question that I think Justin was earlier and paraphrase that. In the space of, today, as we are evolving and building this community anew, a very strong community, how do you really interact with some of the governance and decision making of our community in town, in county, at the university, at the hospital? And how do you kind of intersect with that? How do you engage in those decisions to maintain your social justice, core?
Well, I don't think we're afraid to challenge, but we challenge in a hopefully in a loving way. Like, you have to, we're not going to beat somebody over the head.
But do you
for something.
engage in those?
We do when we need to. When we feel we need to, we will challenge. We're also asked our opinion, and we don't take that lightly. If somebody asks us an opinion on something, we'll do our homework. And we'll enter into a conversation. There are times when we know that it's not our place to be in a conversation. And we just know that. So we discern it. That's a big word for us, discerning. So that's part of that collective decision making. We discern that it's not our place for that.
So, we know that you have been kind of reflecting and thinking of what that future might look like. And so what are the things that are emerging as the priorities for you? Are there clear pathways now?
We're still in the process of making some decisions. We are looking at, we've got this wonderful gift of land. What is the future for that? So we're engaging in conversations. And, when we're ready to make some choices and decisions, we'll let people know. I can say this, that it's not for sale, and it's not going to be chopped up for sale. And it's not a free-for-all. Let's just say that.
Right.
And we're very serious about protecting those contemplative spaces that we've created, because people need that.
100%.
100%.
And the land, one of the things that we've learned, we had Elder Albert Marshall come and speak with us about two-eyed seeing. And because we've also had Carrie Prosper and Clifford Paul come and be with us and help us to listen to the land. And that's not an easy thing for us in our culture to do, in our, Western culture, listening to the land. We have a couple of spots on our property that are old growth forest, and that needs to stay. There's a lot of creatures living on our land. There's a lot of, it's a little story that just touches me. When Fiona hit, we lost a lot of trees and a lot of devastation. Beata and I went and did a little tour of the gardens to see how much there was. One of the sisters said, "I feel sad for the trees, but I feel sad for the critters." So it matters to us. It really matters. So that kind of, but the ministry piece for us, the Charism Ministry, our social and ecological justice, spirituality, that matters. So that's an evolving thing. So that's probably, those are things that we're going to have to evolve into and see where they lead us for sure.
So it's you're at a sort of moment where you're still
Yeah,
discerning.
we're at a moment.
Yeah.
And we've been at this moment for a bit. And
Sure.
as we get, somebody once described it as like a funnel. So, everything goes into the funnel. And we're in the narrow neck of it now before it empties out into what it's going to be. So now we were all over Canada and into the United States. We were in Boston. We were in Lowell. We were in St. Kitts in the West Indies. We're now here in Antigonish. So we've done a lot of this over the years. This isn't a new process for us. The move to Parkland Antigonish, which has been a wonderful move for us.
Explain to those who don't know what that is.
Well, Parkland Antigonish is owned by and operated by another organization. We do not own and or operate.
Right.
We are residents there, but we are. There are other members of the public that live in there with us. So there's the 3 levels of care. And they've been wonderful partners with us in helping us make that transition out of our mother house. We ran our own infirmary where our elder sisters lived, and we needed to replace that care. And we were able to do that through this relationship with Parkland. So that's what that is. So we sold a piece of our property for that to happen. Partially, the location is that our sisters are close to the home they've always known. Our cemetery is there. There's a lot of things. Our general administration is there. We renovated the house that the leadership lived in into offices, so that's for our offices. And the garden now is a place of, the Bethany Centennial Garden is a place of welcome that holds our history. You can walk through it. There's storyboards that tell the story of us and the community. So it was our way, and it was actually members of the community. We brought people in to ask what should be there, like what should we do with the footprint, and we had wonderful ideas. The steeple with a reflecting pool came from a member of the local community. Mm-hmm. They thought that would be a great thing. And when we did it, he said, I can't believe you did that. Well, that's why we asked you to come. Right. And another member of the community said you should leave pieces of the foundation like a ruin so that
that's amazingly beautiful.
So we did that. We would never have thought of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's there. So that's a wonderful place to go for a walk. A lot of people from the hospital, workers and patients and families come up there to get some peace.
And we did a theater performance there, Anuj.
Yes, you did.
You in town, remember?
Oh, that was...
Speaking of that,
this
summer, Laura Teasdale wrote a play. It's 8 tiny plays about gospel hospitality, which will be played out in the Centennial Gardens. And this is part of the 125th celebration.
That's cool.
It'll be in late August.
I highly
late July.
recommend anything that Laura Teasdale
Yes,
she is incredible.
Yeah. I want to ask this just for the sake of kind of people who are listening. On one end, you are a religious congregation. On other end, it seems like you're very open and inclusive and social justice oriented. And that's usually not how people understand it. And so what kind of things would you like to say to people who are not insider of, the Catholicism and other religious things, and how do you interact with them, or what message would you like to give them?
I think the big thing for me is that sense of gospel hospitality. If you remove the gospel out of it for someone that doesn't speak to them, hospitality writ large, radical hospitality, it really is about making room for other. It's about peace building, creating communities for people to thrive, making sure that no one is left behind. I think that's the thing that's so special about Antigonish in many ways. When I worked at the Cody, we had this famous or infamous, I'm not sure, peace camp that was difficult. The children loved it. There were kids from the West Bank and Israel that had come. And they got a lot out of it, but for us it was hard. It was a hard thing to organize. and I was just at my wit's end with some of it. And we put a call out. These kids had never skated before. This is in the summer. So we just put a call out. Anybody have skates for these kids? We had so many skates. I think I cried. The generosity of the people here, that when somebody puts out a call that somebody needs something, that it generally gets answered in whatever way people can. And I think that just to continue to be that way, like for us, it is, how do we be about the development of persons all the time in the smallest or the largest ways? The community fridge is amazing. And they're simple. They're not big things. They're the small things that make the difference. So I think it's coming together and working together.
That's a great final sentiment, I feel like.
And so, if I may just kind of continue this a little bit more, our community has changed quite a bit in the recent past. We have, for the lack of better examples, we have large number of Ukrainians coming here. We have Syrian families here. We have Indians. We have Filipinos. We have what future do you see from a social justice lens and hospitality lens of what this community means in next 10, 15, 20 years? What do you see?
Oh, I hope it continues, and I hope that we continue to make room for that, for diversity, for the table to expand. And that I recently said at a panel I was on that it's making room at the table and welcoming people whenever they come and however they come. And I think that's here, and I think to just continue to cultivate that. Yeah, belonging is so important.
Belonging is
so important. Mm-hmm. Being seen and being heard.
So we've been talking for a very long time. This may be our longest episode yet.
Oh no!
But
I told you.
I said, no worries. I'm not going to cut it.
This was a beautiful education.
But I'd like to give you both, or whoever would like to take it, a chance to have a final message to the people of Antigonish, knowing that, of course, every single person in town and county is listening. So if you could speak directly into their ears, what would you like them to know about the Marthas past, present, future? Anything?
I used to say, I don't want to live in a world that has no Marthas. But I've come to understand that the Martha spirit, this gospel hospitality or their charism, that I see in so many places in the community, like SAFE and the Friendship Corner and the hot meal programs. Mm-hmm. The spirit will always remain in Antigonish. But it's our jobs as a community of collaborators and associates and Antigonishers to continue to carry it forward into the future. Because this is a gift that the Marthas wish to leave us, to leave to the people of Antigonish.
And hopefully they are not going anywhere
well, hopefully,
soon.
yes.
You're not going anywhere.
Anytime soon. Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like your heart is filled with that gift, Anuj, knowing you. You do a lot of good in this town.
No, I don't know about
You've
that.
been infected with
This
Martha's
is not
spirit.
about me today. Just
I don't know.
Sister Joanne.
I think I want to say something like, building on what you said, but what you two just jokingly said. Like, we just, as a congregation, are so grateful for this community. We couldn't have done literally anything we did without the support and love and collaboration of the people of this community. Mm-hmm. So we are who we are with and because of Antigonish. Mm-hmm. It may be that we took the lead in something, but somebody asked. Or if we took the lead out of our own initiative, somebody took it up. So I think that in 125 years of gratitude wrapped up in our just love of this community, and there's just such good programs.
Yeah. And I think your motto, or the 125th motto of standing together, also includes the community.
Yes, it's a play on that.
Yeah.
At the base of the steeple at the reflecting pool, it says standing together in undaunted hope.
Standing
is it.
together in undaunted
In
hope.
undaunted hope. That's not just us standing together. That's all of us standing together. And I think that's the message that I, speaking on behalf of the congregation, which I don't get to do very often, is just thank you to Antigonish.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, this has been
Do you,
enlightening.
yeah, and do you write books? The way you weave words, it's fantastic.
Are you giving out a book deal? Are you trying to make some money off of this? Yeah.
Maybe that's another podcast.
It's a good book, yeah. But anyway, thank you both for coming in.
Thank
This has been
you.
enlightening and fun.
And this podcast is part of this whole thing. I mean, yeah. Thank you for continuing this kind
Thank you
of
for coming.
community
Really
effort.
Thank you.
Appreciate
That's
you.
very kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Antigonish. If you like the podcast, don't hesitate to subscribe. Just go to letstalkantigonish.ca and click. Voila! You'll receive new episodes right in your email inbox.
This podcast is a labor of love. Please consider making a contribution, small or large, maybe a monthly subscription.
A thank you to all of our supporters and subscribers, especially our paid subscribers through the Substack. You are really helping us to keep this podcast going, and we look forward to expanding it in the future. Let's talk, Antigonish.